has to feel sleek. It's part of the experience that you don't feel like you have goggles on, that they sit close to your face, that it's not some bulky thing that is on your head that weighs a lot or construct like a, what can you say, obstruct your vision or something like that. It has to feel like it's not there.
Welcome to Social Kick. I'm Brian Lundquist, joined by Luke Paddington, and from the Magic5 swim goggles, Niklas Hedegaard. Niklas, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Well, it's so interesting to see a new player like Magic5 come into the sport. Before we get into sort of innovation and swimming and technology and all of that, tell us a bit about your background, the story. You know, it's a company founded by swimmers. Tell us about your swimming experience and how you ended up founding a startup company that's, you know, growing and bringing innovation to swimming.
An important part of that is that I used to swim a lot more than I do now. I competed twice at the European Championships in 2013 and 2017. So I have a pretty significant swimming background, you could say. And I guess the way that you come into something like this often is happen chance. I didn't set out when I was swimming saying, okay, I also want to create technology and create products for swimming. It sort of happened. I met up with a guy at university that was doing triathlons, and he sort of saw an issue with the goggles, something that people that swim a lot more than he did, me, probably wasn't aware of, because you kind of get used to the products that you're using, and it takes a special mindset to sort of stop up and say, I can do that better. This is different, and we should do something about that. So he approached me and was like, we should do something about swimming goggles, don't you think? And I thought, maybe there's something that it could be done. And yeah, then we started figuring out how to make swimming goggles.
Luke and I were chatting before the show about innovation in sport, and especially in your space. And it's so interesting to me to bring innovation to goggles, because, I mean, if you've got a different moment in time, please tell me. But I believe that the biggest innovation in goggles was goggles. Right. The fact that they even existed to begin with was the innovation, and since then there's been, you know, a micro improvements maybe, but there's a lot of people that are really tied to, you know, the goggles, and I think that while there have been new products to come about, there's not been innovation in the way that it seems like you all are bringing innovation to goggles. So, like, why goggles, and how did you see that as a business opportunity where you can build, you know, a brand and a product and a company?
Great question. First off, I want to go off the little tangent that you mentioned. I urge everyone that listens to search Google first swimming goggles ever, or first swimming goggles made. It's a funny picture that comes up. They definitely look a little bit different than they do today, but also not much has changed.
Okay.
So do that. That's a little cliffhanger. So why swimming goggles? It's funny that you mention it. It's I guess there are different ways to attack that question. A lot of the other companies that are on the market, they see swimming goggles mostly as an accessory, right? They're focusing a lot more of their branding, their stuff on the suits, the clothing that they do, the equipment that they do outside the goggles. And goggle is sort of a thing that you add to the cart before you check out, or something that you take with you when you're down shopping. So it's an afterthought. That doesn't really sort of lend itself to be a nice environment to put a lot of R&D into. But I think that early on we went out and we asked, I think, 500 people or so from different areas of the swimming environment, and asked them, so what do you think about your goggles? Can you recommend them to your friends and family? And most of them couldn't, and it was mostly because of the fit. I remember being close to 90% or so said that they have had issues with the fit of the goggles that they've been using. And we're sitting here on an idea in the beginning. It was very much just an idea. We didn't know anything about how to make swimming goggles. I never made a single pair myself. I don't know if you have. So it's you go from an idea, and it takes a while, and you just gotta really believe that you can come up with something that is different than what else is out there. If you just kind of come up with a different brand, it's got to be a really good brand to cut through the noise. And Luckily, it's not just the brand for us; it was also a different approach to the product that could set us apart. So we're trying to go out and actually ask of people that they request a little bit more of the swimming goggles, that they can do a little bit more than just be that afterthought that you put in the cart on your way out the store, sort of.
It's a brave market to get into because it's such a saturated market, and of course, you said we all have our dedication to the goggles. And with innovation, it's price points. The reason I chose my goggles when I swam is because these things, when I swam, were they're $5. But yes, every month, 2 months, they melted, and you have to get new ones, right? Or in foam. But we went on it in college because this is the price points, and they only. But I would never recommend these to other people because they didn't fit well, like you said. So I thought I was very brave of you. What made you feel that you could build a business plan off this simply based on and sell it? How could you convince the market to get into that? It was quite a brave leap to jump into, I think.
First off, there's a big part of motivation for us that there's so many people around the world that swim. It's a huge market, much more than when we get involved in competitive swimming. We tend to focus on people that swim competitively. That's our world, and that's a very, very small part of the people that swim. It's actually the second most pursued sport after running. So it's bigger than any other sport that you can imagine in terms of physical activity. So there's about, I think, 30 million Americans that swim regularly. So that's a sizable amount. That's just in America. And in most Western countries, it's around 10% of the population. So, and they all need goggles, right? It's you need goggles and a swimsuit, then you get to go. You definitely need goggles, right? So that's sort of the opportunities out there.
Okay.
And then after you've set yourself on that, then yes, you said it correctly. People, at least competitive swimmers, were used to paying $5 for a pair of Swedes. How do you compete with that when you come out and you ask a much higher price point? It comes down to putting that much more value into the product, and maybe not going after the competitive swimmers necessarily first if you're trying to build a business, right? As I said, it's a small amount of people that actually swim competitively, and a much bigger amount of people that swim recreationally or for triathlon or for fitness purpose or whatever that might be. So there's tons of reasons why people swim, and you got to add more value to their swimming, and it depends on what sort of their reason for going to the pool is. Then you can try to add value to that reason with the goggles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I've noticed as a pool swimmer, sprinter turned competitive triathlete is that the application that I'm looking for in a goggle is different. And in the pool, even though before we started recording, I was talking about my allegiance to a goggle that I've worn for many years that was really helpful for me in the pool. But that said, I often stop in the pool and rinse my goggles out. And in some cases, if I do longer swims, they give me headaches if I leave my goggles on for 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time, and I need to stop and rinse them out. And so what I'm looking for in a goggle, to your point, is different now and may change. And starting at the root of that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious if you could just go through for people that aren't familiar, because I think like Luke and I are coming at this conversation both as competitive swimmers. Some of our audience are competitive swimmers, but to your point, and like we said, I'm here in Kona at the World Championships for triathlon. Triathletes often come to swimming last. It's the least a familiar sport for many of them, and they don't know the equipment space very well, and yet are very tech savvy and innovation savvy for their bike and running equipment, but maybe not so familiar with what to do selection wise within the swimming space. And so if you could just, how does the business work? Because you've got some key differentiators that are very different from other swimming brands, besides just being a goggle forward brand. How does it work? What's the value proposition?
Right. So you can start with what our goggles is not. every other goggle that you have tried is a one-size-fits-all goggle. It's produced, it's mass-produced. It's they spit them out every second, and it just they ship it out to you, and you kind of bet on that it's gonna fit you. And at the end of the day, I was a competitive swimmer. I spent so much money on different goggles, trying to get them to find a pair that fit me. I've tried. I don't want to mention any brands. Can't do that anymore. But I've tried a lot of them, and I'll see my teammates swim with different goggles. They look cool. I'm gonna try that. Find out doesn't work for me. So that's really the thing that we're trying to fix for people, and the way that it works. I'll explain that now. You download our app. You can also start on the website, but essentially it involves downloading our app at some point during the purchasing process. You have to scan your face. So this is my phone. I'll try not to make a big shadow in front of my face, but you sort of scan your face. Takes 10 seconds if you have a newer phone. And we basically map out the contours of your eye socket. So we'll know the depths, the lengths, everything around it. And we send that data to our server, and we have an algorithm that sort of takes, if you have your eye socket over here on one side and you have the goggle on the other side, it sort of tries to position the goggle on your face, trying to find the optimal fit according to some parameters. That is basically our secret sauce, you could say. And then it spits out a data set that it is being sent to a robot, and the robot attacks a pair of goggles and customizes it so that it fits that user that scanned themselves. Then we package it, send it off to the end consumer. So it's that's the process, and explained in a very short amount of time, and there's obviously a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes.
That's what I read when I bought your goggles 3 years ago. But since then, there are a lot more value adds that you guys did to it. First of all, when I wear it, people say, wow, those are cool, because they're cool looking. So you put design into it. Absolutely.
Which is helpful for Luke, because he's not very cool. So anything that he can have to differentiate himself is great. So well done.
Well, first of all, I want to do a little product boasting, because I think it's good. But it came in this container. Where's my camera? There, which is, it's nice. Goggles don't come in these cases. I still have this 3 years later, and it comes in here. These are the goggles 3 years later. Rubbers still intact, which is huge for me. And I used to swim before I moved there every single day, nonstop. So yes, perfect fit, comfort, but with that comes not having, as Brian said, headaches. My straps are super loose on my head, really, really loose. So I don't have to worry about it. But what, as a swimmer, you don't realize when you have it, you don't get raccoon eyes, but when you put it on, it's such a low profile without touching my eyelashes, and you get really good peripheral vision, which is important to me when I'm swimming, because a lot of goggles can be like this, right? Especially just the ones I showed earlier. So those are the things I discovered upon putting them on, and I still wear them. And I literally could. They're so loose, I can almost have them in my face without straps, which is nice. So did you plan all of these things out besides the comfort fit?
Sure. Yes. To answer the question very short, yes. That's why I was part of the team early on, not only for the technology that sort of came later, right? First, Rasmus is my co-founder friend. He came to me, as I said earlier, and was like, we need to do something about goggles. Him being a triathlete, a very novice swimmer. He coached himself to do his first Ironman, and he did okay at that. But it's bringing someone in like me that actually have worn tons of goggles. I remember very vividly in the beginning that I had a lot of ideas about the low profileness of the goggle. I didn't want a goggle that was more like a mask type goggle, fit your whole face, something like that. It has to feel sleek. It's part of the experience that you don't feel like you have goggles on, that they sit close to your face, that it's not some bulky thing that is on your head that weighs a lot, or obstruct your vision or something like that. It has to feel like it's not there. That was essentially my goal for the goggles.
Agreed.
Make them feel like you're not even wearing them, but it's just an accessory that looks cool, but you don't feel like it's annoying you in any way, whether that is the comfort or the sort of the vision field or anything like that, or the drag or whatever, right? That was basically the vision. And yeah, we landed on a goggle that has some pretty unique angles, and luckily for us, that's also one of the main ways to sort of differentiate the brand. I know, Brian, you mentioned to me before the before the call here that you were wearing the Swedish goggles from Arena, and it's actually, I think, the only other goggle that I remember that has sort of an angular lens.
Yeah, it started with the Speedo Hydra line, which I think they've discontinued. And so we were working with Cesar Cielo was working with Arena at the time, and he had custom make because he was all about the Speedo Hydra lines, but sponsored by Arena. So we're like, how do we get field of vision, but also the comfort of like a Swedish goggle that's got a rubber gasket on it? And that was kind of the impetus for it. But now you have field of vision with like increased comfort above that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I really believe in that angular glass. It's something when you're trying to sell this to a novice swimmer, someone that's just starting, they look at it and be like, why is there an angle on the glass? And they sort of get the opportunity to explain why you want the head position to be like it has to be in freestyle and all that jazz. But I think to me it was something that I personally responded to. I felt like that was a good design of a pair of swimming goggles. And then you sort of got to believe it. You pick something and you can't really change it every so often if you're trying to build a brand. So I'm pretty confident that we found a good design on the lens itself. But as I said before, it's not really the sort of an add-on to the main part of the goggles. The real sort of differentiator is really the gasket piece. That rubber piece that touches the face, right? That's the main differentiator. That's the one that mirrors your eye socket. Yeah.
We had Katie Hoff on, and we teased her because Katie Hoff was famous for behind the blocks. What did she do?
Yeah, squish
all the time, because that's the number one thing that we care about as swimmers at the end of the day. These things are so tight, and we put it under our things; they don't fall off. And so that's why goggles are also so sacred, because it's like superstition, right? They're not gonna fall off when you dive in. And besides all what we talked about, and I have started to see some world-class elite swimmers race at the fastest events. And you want to talk about that, the uptake of and the security that we're providing for the top swimmers in the world now, Olympic silver medalists, for instance.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're working currently with Kasia Wasick. She won the silver medal at the World Championships earlier this year. Really fast in a 50 freestyle. So that's really as fast as you go, right? As you said. And one thing that I used to wear these obviously as well when I was swimming competitively towards the end of my career at least. And one thing I still sort of had that with me, that you need to have them super tight, right? You don't want them to fall off. So it was mostly for me, it was sort of a what can you say, a ritual to sort of tighten a little bit extra in the call room. Okay, these are my training goggles. Now it's time for racing, so we do that, and then we put them on. But yeah, the goal is really that they shouldn't be worn so tight. I think the most something that a lot of competitive swimmers don't think about is the amount of time you spend training versus racing, right? You spend most of your time racing, so it's about making that time as enjoyable as possible. If you sacrifice on the comfort during your practice, you can always make it less comfortable for racing. That's your prerogative. You can always do that. That's easy. Just tighten it a bit more. But it's about making the training sessions as comfortable as possible.
Go ahead. I said the reason I was excited to speak to you. I love the goggles, yes, but primarily because we try here to grow our sport and to show we love our sport. We want to grow it, and have people have careers beyond actual being in the water. And people think, okay, well, I'll coach or do clinics, and you're providing opportunities to grow our business, and you have. Not only with yourself are you innovating our sport, you're innovating yourself to be in a sport. And also you have some people like Matt Grievous involved as investors. So talk about that, about growing the business of swimming and having a career in swimming that's not traditional, that we think of after you retire. I think that's important.
Great question. It really warms my heart that you asked a question like that. I love swimming. I've always done it. I'm not one of those people that after you've had your last race and your last practice, you're completely done with swimming forever. I think that's really sad when that happens. And my swimmer heart bleeds and goes out to all those people that experience that. That's unfair. But if you can bear to stay in swimming, there's tons of ways to do it. Mine is one of them, and it's definitely different than what most people are doing. I'm really fortunate to sort of see swimming from a different side now. I'm sort of on the brand side now, right? I have to go out and make contracts with athletes and try to sponsor different stuff. And before I was on the opposite end of that, trying to grab all the money I could, right? That was sort of that was what I was trying to do. And I think I've learned a lot of valuable lessons being on this side now. I see our sport in a different light. I can't help but compare it in some sense to triathlon. Now, Brian, that you are down that you're in Kona, I think that in some ways swimming, at least for my part, I wouldn't like to be compared too much to triathletes. I think there's some beef going on there, but they have something done right in terms of the sport and the marketing of the sport. And I think that there's a lot of stuff to learn there. I think if you're sitting out there and you're a swimmer and you're into marketing, you're into, you have business acumen or something of some sort, there's tons of stuff to do in this sport. We just a lot of steps behind other sports, such as even triathlon, I must say.
Yeah, I agree. I think do you feel like your company is a tech company or is it a product company? Because I can't think of any other swimming company whose technology and sort of differentiator is the customization that's made available through, through the facial scan and that software, as well as the engineering that you put into that. How do you think about that, and how does that manifest in like the day-to-day operations of the company?
Another good question. So I think early on you always have to focus on the task that's right in front of you, and that is selling a lot of swimming goggles. That is how it's going to be when you're a startup, you're a small company. That has to be the main task for you most of the time. But I think already the first year, us as founders, we were pretty set on not only making swimming goggles forever. We're trying to set up a sort of a pipeline that can accumulate more products than just one. Last year we went on Shark Tank, and that was a first time that we sort of said that publicly to the world. If you watch that show, we kind of we got a deal there, which we were very happy about. And one of the promises that we came there with is that, hey, we are actually a robotics company that creates swimming goggles right now, but we could potentially make other products as well with the technology and the understanding that we have of how to work with customization of products. It's not a one-to-one. It's not like you can just tell the robot, okay, now go over and produce shoes or whatever it might be. But the technology and the understanding of how to work with data inputs and outputs can be transferred in a lot of ways.
So do you see the future of the company continuing in the swimming space or beyond the swimming space?
I would rather say beyond the swimming space than more inside swimming space. I think there's still a ways to go before people are ready to scan themselves without clothes on to get a pair of swimsuits that fit. So until we cross that bridge, I think it makes a lot of sense to look elsewhere for products that are in dire need of customization. And if you guys have any, then let me know if there's anything that you feel like
swim caps
should be customized.
Swim caps. It's a big thing with swim caps, especially for black swimmers who have different hairs that fit. They're trying to do different caps, but yeah, the difference of caps are important. I have a huge head, like for instance, and things like that. And we always wear this helmet caps, right? And that can be customized nicely.
It definitely can. It is one thing that is that we are looking into slightly. It's not so far away for us to make swim caps, obviously, and it's the same audience that we're currently targeting, so it makes a lot of sense to do that. What I'm actually curious about is there's a lot of give in swim caps, right? There's a lot of forgiveness. So maybe you don't need to 100% customize a swim cap to make it fit a lot better than the ones that are there now. Maybe you just need to help people pick the right one, right?
That's right.
I don't know what you think about that.
Well, yeah, I think that it's all about marginal gains at the highest level, right? And so, I think there's a difference between what the application is for the majority of the public who are just going to enjoy swimming and be comfortable in the water, which I think you've nailed with the goggles, or at least I say this not having actually worn them, but Luke's myself. So I look forward to trying a pair custom fit to my face. From what I understand about the value proposition, it sounds like you're offering, a different level of comfort, which is making the sport more accessible to a larger population, not just like the people who are savvy goggle or equipment users who may be okay with living a life of, a foggy, lens of the world and deal with a bit of discomfort. That's not the normal person. So I think that while there may be opportunity for marginal gains at the highest level to reduce ripple and have a customized fit for each head shape, that's totally still a thing for sure. Nobody has gotten that right. Are the caps better now at the highest level? Yes, but there's every athlete at the Olympic Games, you still finish. Caleb Dressel is still finishing wearing his old cap with the ripples on the top, like for sure that's there. How much gain is there within that as far as drag goes? I don't know. But I think for me, it's more about like the epicenter of like where it sounds like your company was targeting was the bigger population, and how can we make how do we make them feel more comfortable in the water, more confident in the water, and also stylish in the water, and all those things, and then have them take off. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe, but I think it's also possible that there's more comfort with other swimming equipment too. Like my first thing comes to feet, because as a cyclist, I've always had issues with like pressure on the feet, comfort in the saddle. And so whether that means, is in your future for swimming, that you don't have those contact points in the pool. But there may be other things that swimmers who are either new to the sport or aren't, the lifelong, enthusiast who have some other data points or pieces of feedback that they can give you that say, this is what maybe keeps them from enjoying swimming all that much. Because, like, again, to bring it back to triathletes, most triathletes loathe the swimming part of their training. To me, the question is why, and a lot of it is, a discomfort with the training, the breathing, so it's like, okay, well, how do we make breathing more comfortable? How do we make, the slog of being in the water more fun? So, anyway, I digress, but.
No, I agree. It's our company is pretty much about making a better swimming experience, as I said in the beginning. And it's I know it means something else for a competitive swimmer. I was one. I know that for me, I would probably pay a lot more to get a cap that wouldn't ripple. But then we really have to say to ourselves, okay, we are only a swimming goggle, or we are a swimming company, swimming brand, right? We got to make tons more SKUs, tons of other items that are swimming related. And I don't see that being where the value prop for our company really is. We might do some things because it's easier for us. I think a cap, when we've made one cap, it's easier to make more caps and dive into race caps as well. That will be easier. It will be easier so it's more, I think about the technology in terms of understanding different body parts. Right now we understand what goes on around your eye socket very well, right? We understand a lot of different things about different people, what are things that are similar and dissimilar between people, stuff like that. We'll get to know that about the head sizes of people. Then there will be tons of products that we can make within that category that uses the head circumference or shape or something for the product. And you talked about feet. That's a different body part. So you would need to capture data around feet and learn how to understand that data and measure it and produce an output out of that. And then you can, as soon as you've done it for one product, you can do it with more products that are surrounding or using feed as input, if that makes sense.
So why do I get headaches when I wear my goggles for 10 minutes? Is it because of pressure on the top side of the eye socket? What's happening? Do you know?
Yep. Yeah, it is. I got the same with one pair that I used to wear. It's usually here, so it stops some kind of blood flow to your forehead, and that can give some numbness. And if you wear it long enough, it probably gives you a headache too. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't do that.
What about fog? How do you solve the problem of foggy goggles? Long term, not outside of the first week. Every time you get a fresh pair, they're great, but it seems like, after a week or a few weeks, it's like, oh, the anti-fog's worn off, and then, nobody really uses the spray. Or
this guy does a good job still. 2 3 years. It's not bad still.
How have you done that?
So I'm not going to sit here and say that our goggles don't fog. That's not that. I don't think that anybody has solved that for real. Different companies will try different things. I know from personal experience that I think 99% of all goggles are produced, if they have anti-fog, they're produced the same way. There's something about electrical current through a chamber that is decompressurized, and then you add a solution to it, and it sort of sticks to the surface, and it looks very high tech, and it doesn't work most of the time. And I think we have dabbled in a lot of different tests to figure out the benefit. Let me get back to it. The benefit of being a goggle company only is that you can focus on everything around goggles, right? We don't have to worry about fins and t-shirts and whatever other stuff that you might have if you're a much bigger company than we are. We can actually try to perfect swimming goggles. And one of those parts, as you mentioned, is definitely fogging. I wish that we could make goggles that would never fog. Only downside is then people maybe wouldn't buy as often. If they only needed one pair, it would last a lifetime, right? But that's don't tell anybody.
No, you get different styles. Just
yeah,
shapes.
You're right. I'm joking. So I think there's potential in nanotechnology to look into something like that. We've even tried the sticker. So imagine you put a sticker on the inside of your goggles that sort of coats the anti-fog that is there when you buy them, and it sort of protects it. That lasted quite well. It lasted for a long time. I had a pair that lasted for, I would say, at least a year and without fogging. But the downside was that sort of the sticker would loosen its grip around the edges, and mold could start to form inside, and that just didn't look appealing. It didn't look good. So that was also a bad solution. So it's about finding something that solves the problem of fogging without creating a new problem, right?
Yeah.
And that is that's an ongoing thing.
One of the things that we've talked about, especially recently on the show, is the difficulty in swimming with real-time feedback, where in other sports it's easier for a coach or someone who's giving feedback, a teammate, to be able to tell you, do this, change that, move this, make this incremental change. But with swimming, that's quite difficult. You're in a different medium. There's most people, even though the technology exists, aren't doing the headsets where the swimmer can hear the feedback. So what do you think about some, how do you think that there's an opportunity to solve this problem? Is this something that you guys see and are working on, or
there's the so I think we're not the highest price point goggles. There's other goggles that are more expensive, and one that comes to mind is definitely the Form goggles, right? They do give you metrics, a heads-up display, and I really applaud them for, again, trying to innovate on swimming goggles, trying to innovate in this industry. I'm really happy that someone else is trying to do that too. I don't see us necessarily going that route. I think that, first of all, our key differentiator is the fit, and there's so much stuff with that. You said you couldn't remember other products that are trying to customize based on, say, a scan or something. So there's so much potential in that. Why would we try to complicate things further by putting in other things that that will require a lot more R&D and a lot of it's difficult to maintain it and make sure that it works all the time. And they are way ahead of us on that curve. So sort of a form I'm talking about in terms of understanding what people need from a heads-up display. Now, I do think that there's value in it. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
The reason I bring it up is because, like everybody is so data. Luke lives by his Apple Watch, and I think that and everybody lives by, the info on their phone. And I think like sport has shifted to a much more scientific, data-driven approach. And I think that's actually what's leading to a lot of the improvement in athletes, from better nutrition that they know about because of, of learnings, and are approaching everything in a much more scientific way. So I just see like, how do we incorporate, as somebody who's a leader in innovation with, like you said, a robotics company that's in the swimming space, with what I see in the athletics community, especially the like endurance and or Olympic sport kind of aerobic community, is almost a reliance, an increased reliance on technology and data. And I think swimming is behind in that, especially in real time, right? So it's much more about feel and heart rate, and we get out of the water and test lactate, but in the real time you don't actually know what's happening. So I don't know. I see that.
Put the headphone on. Don't put the microphone and speaker on where my coach can talk to me when I'm swimming. That exists out there, and I do not need somebody in my head when I'm swimming. Don't. But
yes, to be free of distractions, right? Yeah. One thing though that I think I've thought about this for quite some time. I think it was in 2018 actually. I went to ISPO. That's like what could you call it? Trade fair for sports industry products in Munich. It's the world's biggest trade fair, and there's companies all around the world, and they show off their newest tech. We were featured there when we started the company back then. But one thing that I saw, there was a company, they did LED screens and other wearable tech. So LED screens that were wearable. Their vision was that you could have like a T-shirt that had LED on it, and then you could just change the T-shirt. And the LED was malleable. It was so thin that it was like you were wearing an LED screen. And they already used some of their transistors for, let's say, firefighters when they enter a house. I'll get back to swimming in a moment, but when they enter the house, it would measure smoke, heat, temperature, all that, and it would send feedback. So when those transistors get so small and they become so soft and become like a sheet of paper, basically. I always envisioned that you could put it, let's say, on the temple here of your goggle, and you could measure a lot of stuff there. I know that there are already people that are, I know with Polar, I think is measuring, to have that little brick that you put up here and it measures your heart rate, stuff like that. I don't see why you couldn't have a lot more tech in the temple of your goggle in the future, whether that be us or someone else, I don't know. But as a swimmer, I could see a lot more valuable information being captured that way.
And our buddy John, who cannot swim without music, and so he has the bone conduction always on when he's swimming. I feel like there's opportunity there as well. I think bringing innovation within swimming and equipment and sport beyond is certainly huge. And I think maybe unfair to say that other companies aren't bringing innovation, but I think in a lot of ways, sport is resistant to accepting technology innovation, especially if it is perceived to enhance performance. But if it's in an unfair way, right? But you're trying to walk that line of making a more enjoyable experience, while also for sure making it faster. I did want to ask about the 5 and the 5%, the 5% edge. Where does that number come from?
Great. So I think that it's a name that we had to come up with that was it couldn't just be swimming, because as I said earlier on, we thought about it couldn't be swimming related. It had to be something else, because one day we still want to make swimming goggles. We want to make something else that is not swimming goggles. So it has to be a name that doesn't only fit with water. And we came up with the Magic5 because we want to take products that are already a concept. We don't want to come out and create a new wheel, or like come up reinventing the wheel. That's not what we want to do. We want to take a product like swimming goggles. Everyone knows what a swimming goggle is, how to use it. And the problem is the fit. That's how we identified. There's a problem with the fit. And we can sort of keep most of the goggle intact. Like, we don't have to deconstruct it completely to create a much better experience. So the Magic5 is basically keeping 95% of the product the same as it was before we came to the market, and then playing around with 5% of it to create the whole difference, the Magic 5%. That's sort of the idea. So we take 5% of the swimming goggle, that is the part that touches your face, or whatever, how you want to define the 5%. It's also marketing, but that's really the idea. And we could go out with other products, identify, okay, here we just have to change some small parts of it, play around with this and this. We're not, by the way, when you order the goggle, we're not customizing the whole goggle. That would be very costly. Then it would cost a lot more than the $60 that it's cost right now. The main parts we're customizing is the gasket, as I said, and then the nose piece. We identified that if we just customize those two areas, it makes a huge difference for people. We don't need to customize the elastic, right? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add any added value, or at least it's a very small incremental value that it adds, I guess, by adjusting the elastic. We don't have to adjust the temple. That's fine to keep that the same size. Now that we have enough data, maybe we want to dive into changing the size of the lens a little bit, and having different options for people depending on the size of the face. It will allow us to target kids swimming as well, or people just with very small, narrow faces, or stuff like that. Yeah, as I said, it's about a very long-winded way to explain the name. Yeah, 5% that makes the difference.
I could see how you could apply it to other sports too, though. We had a guest on, Arthur Bolden, Olympic sprinter, and Oakley designed goggles that the strap came over and came like this to him. They're quite innovative, and he ran with them. And he's one of the first track athletes to race with sunglasses that were custom to his head and fitted. So I can see how perhaps you could do custom visors for speed skaters, for track guys, for stuff that would be fit well, elegant, and people would use it for sure. Or triathlon.
Yeah,
you guys all run with sunglasses, yeah. So
anybody listening that has a cool idea from a different sport, something, we are all very into sport. So if we stay in the realm of sport, we're very keen to explore it further. It also has to come from a personal drive, that it's a product that you find interesting. If someone told me that, hey, there's a lot of money to get over here from customizing this product, first we have to agree how much money are we talking about. That it has to come from a personal sort of interest in the product. Otherwise, it won't be fun to pursue it. But maybe that's an excuse to pick up speed skating, like you said, or
It's my favorite Olympic sport. I've always wanted to do it, and they didn't cover it enough in the U.S. in this last Olympics. So
why haven't you tried it?
Access. I don't even know where to go to get a. Actually, I've been in Colorado now lately, so maybe there's an opportunity there. I bet there is for sure. So I should go check it out. Yeah. Well, I think what you're doing is really good for the sport, and you're coming at it from a different angle, which I think is not only bringing a positive benefit to the athletes by way of a new way of thinking and a great product, but also it's challenging the other players in the space to think about how they could further their technology. And I think that's what the sport really needs is innovation on all fronts. We're trying to do that in terms of getting messaging out about athletes and people like yourself, as well as some other friends of ours who are doing this in a similar space. So thanks, and I couldn't agree more with you about the my heart breaks for athletes who finish the sport and walk away and never touch a pool and never connected to swimming anymore, because we build up such a strong wealth of knowledge. And so I celebrate you for, continuing to be a part of the sport and finding a career in it and in a path that maybe you didn't imagine to begin with. So, keep it up. And thanks for chatting with us and sharing about your company.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was great to be on and talk with you guys. I wish you all the best, and yeah, can't wait to listen more to your podcast here.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, Niklas. And that's it for this episode of Social Kick. We'll see you later.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're enjoying Social Kick, tell your friends about it. And be sure to tell us what you liked by leaving a comment and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Social Kick. And you can find all of our content on our website,